What's going on, everybody? Today I'm back with another installment of the Faction Spotlight series, and right now we're going to be looking at the Clan of Sar. So personally, I really enjoy the Clan of Sar as a faction. I think they have some of the most interesting faction technologies in the game. The faction abilities are also good. However, in terms of showing them off in a demo, they're pretty bland. So we'll get to them and probably mostly just talk about them. But I'm going to focus the demo more on the faction technologies because they're really cool. But when we start up here at the top left, we'll see the flagship Son of Ragh, which is probably one of the most vanilla flagships in the game. It does have the anti-fighter barrage ×4, which is really nice, but in terms of unique abilities, there are none. So we didn't even build it for the demo. We're not going to use it because you've already seen the abilities like sustained damage and anti-fighter barrage in other parts of the series. So it's nothing special. However, if we scroll down to the bottom right here, I think that the Clan of Sar I think they have the most interesting faction unit technology in the game, and that's the floating factory. So the floating factory is incredibly unique in the sense that it's a space dock, but it acts like a ship during movements. So first of all, when you produce it, it's going to be placed not on a planet, but in the space area of the system you've produced it in. And that's going to bring up a lot of new user interface interaction for the player, because it's just like a ship. So it's going to show up as a ship on the game board, and it's going to show up in the space areas for combat. So if you look at the floating factory, you can see it has movement and it has capacity. So it's really quite interesting. If we scroll up here, we'll read the faction abilities right now. So we have Scavenge, which is after we gain control of a planet, we'll be gaining one trade good. And then we have Nomadic, which says that we can score objectives even if we don't control all the planets in our home system. So typically, to score public objectives, you need to control all the planets in your home system. But with the Clan of Sar Nomadic ability, this isn't the case. You can actually score secret objectives if you don't have your home system, regardless of your faction. So this is more for public objectives. So let's go over to our game tab here. And we can see our faction technologies out here. So we've already seen Floating Factory 1, but that's not actually the faction technology. The faction technology is the Floating Factory 2. And I've actually upgraded the unit here. So we'll take a look at it. And it's virtually identical to Floating Factory 1, apart from the fact that it gets increase in its movement. So movement up to plus 1, bringing it to 2. And it also gets its production value increased by 2, from 5 to 7. So you can really pump out armies really fast here if you have the capacity and the resources. Not only that, but you have a mobile production base, which when we're going to see when we combine it with the other faction technologies, really, really cool. So the other technology is chaos mapping, and you'll find it in the propulsion deck. So it's the one propulsion prerequisite to research it, and we have it here. So chaos mapping has 2 components to it. The first is passive, and it says that other players cannot activate asteroid fields that contain one or more of your ships. Now, there is a caveat to this, because I did mention how the floating factory acts as a ship, but that's only during movement. So if you park your floating factory in an asteroid field and you have no ships, so either it's just the floating factory or a bunch of infantry, then you can get dislodged from there. Someone can activate your system and then move ships into it, and your floating factory will become destroyed immediately. The nice thing about chaos mapping with that passive ability is this faction does start with anti-mass deflectors, so we'll be able to show it off right away. Okay, so before I get into showing off the technologies and the abilities, I want to actually show how the UI works with the floating factory. It's pretty straightforward, but it's worth mentioning. So on the board here, the Clan of Sar is down at the bottom of the screen, because that's our tab currently. If we go up to the Federation of Souls home system, we'll see nothing new. We'll see the space dock, right? And we'll see the ships. And notice how we can only move around our ships, our carrier and the destroyer here. And the space dock is just permanently fixed on Jord there. And we have another one here on Techron. But if we go down to the Clan of Sar, and we see in our home system, we have a cruiser, but we also have a movable space dock. Because this space dock cannot be placed on planets, right? In fact, during the setup phase, when you're clicking your units and placing them on the tiles on your home system, you have to place the space dock into the space region if you're Clan of Sar. You can't place them on planets. And up here in the Quan system, you can see we have another space dock. It's free to move about the board. Right? And we can toggle their visibility on and off, just like with the other ships. If you click on the system, in the Quan system, you see the space dock show up with the rest of the ships, right? And if you click the planet, the space dock doesn't show up there because it's not part of the planet. Okay, so that's just, it's not integral to the game, but like, because using the units are purely aesthetic, but it's just nice to know that you have that option to do that. All right. So currently, hovering over these space docks, we see we actually have the Floating Factory 2 upgrade. So we have the movement of 2 and the production of 7. So we're going to show off here in the demo how these space docks can indeed move. Okay. So here we are in a beta wormhole system, and there's a beta wormhole system up here. So with the movement of 2, we should be able to get from here to the asteroid field. Now, at the moment, we're going to hold off on that movement because before we do anything at the beginning of our turn is when we're going to use chaos mapping. Okay. So we already went over the first part of chaos mapping, the passive part. The second part says at the start of your turn, during the action phase, you may produce 1 unit in a system that contains at least one of your units that has production. Now for the Clan of Sar, the only unit that has production is the space dock. So we have 2 floating factories here. So what we can do is choose, if we'd like, which space dock we'd like to produce from for chaos mapping. Now, if we click some random system, say the nebula up here, and we try to use chaos mapping, we're told that we have no space dock in the system. To activate chaos mapping, select a system that contains one of your space docks. So we can click this system, and then we'll be brought to the build unit screen. And we're told that chaos mapping was activated and that we may produce 1 unit in the system. Or if we go back to the main board, we can click our home system, which also has a space dock, and activate it again. And now our home system is in the big display. So we have that freedom to choose which space dock we want to build from. Now, there is a bit of a current, I guess, debate on how to handle building infantry using chaos mapping. And what I mean by that is, in our home system, we currently have a space dock, which is in space, and we also control 2 planets. And if you read chaos mapping says that we may produce 1 unit in a system that contains at least one of your units as production, but it's not telling us that we're actually using the production ability, so to speak. So, I mean, really, there's a bit of debate on whether you can just put the infantry in space or put it on any of the planets you control in the system. So what we did as developers, after talking about it, was we opted to give the user the choice to either place the infantry in space or on any of the planets they control. And that's only going to be the case for infantry, right? If you're building a ship, then obviously that's going to go in space. So let's see how that works. And I just think it's also kind of nice right now to have the option. It adds a little more flavor to the game because it's going to add in a nice piece of user interface that I like. So let's do that. Let's go into our home system and let's activate chaos mapping. So we're producing 1 unit and only 1 unit. So if we just say build a destroyer and spend 1 resource and go destroyer, if we click confirm, we're going to get chaos mapping building destroyer. If you're producing 1 infantry, select the location you would like it to be placed. And in this scroll down menu, you're going to get 3 options here: space area, Liz's 2, because we control it, and also Ragh, because we also control that. However, because we're building a destroyer, this selection is completely unnecessary. And in fact, even if we do try to choose a planet, this will get ignored. This will only be for infantry. So I'm going to cancel that. And I'll reset our choices right now. The other thing to note here is if you do have Sarwing tools, it doesn't apply to chaos mapping because we're not using production. And if we read Sarwing tools, which we currently don't have, it says when 1 or more of your units use production. And chaos mapping says at the start of your turn, you may produce 1 unit in a system that contains a unit that has production. So we're not using production. It's weird, but it is the ruling. I'm almost 100% sure. I mean, if anyone disagrees, you're welcome to comment on it in the section below and let me know why you think it shouldn't be. But for now, that's how it is. We can also use chaos mapping in the Quan system. And if we do that, if we spend 1 trade good to build 1 infantry, and we click confirm, you'll notice here, well, you can't see it because for whatever reason, you can't see the drop down menu. But if you try to drop down here, you're only going to get space area. And the reason is because we actually don't control Quan. We have the space dock in the system, but if I sort through my planet cards, you'll see I have Liz's 2, Ragh, Lazar, Sakulag, Wellen, and that's it. So I actually don't have Quan. So we can't place our infantry there. But let's go ahead and see chaos mapping, and we'll build an infantry, and we'll place it on Liz's 2. So click our home system, activate chaos mapping. We'll exhaust a planet here. We'll exhaust Liz's 2. Commit the resources, select 1 infantry. If we try to select more units now, well, if you try to select a PDS, you can't build a PDS, but if you try to select another infantry, because we think we can build 2 for the price of 1, we get the message, cannot build infantry. You're already building 1 unit. So we can't do that. Can't build other ships now. So we'll just build the 1 infantry. And we'll click confirm, and we're going to put it on Liz's 2. So confirm. Charlie used chaos mapping. 1 infantry was produced in system 11. And if we click Liz's now, we have the 1 infantry, and now the control token on the board has been replaced with this infantry. And you'll notice it's still our turn to perform an action, because chaos mapping is just a technology ability. So now that we've used chaos mapping, if we try to use it again, we'll be told that we can't activate the technology because it's already been used. Okay, great. Now, let's go ahead and get our space dock into the asteroid field here. So I'm going to activate the asteroid field. And then I'm going to take our space dock from the Quan system after we pass on the ability round. And I'll also take our 2 fighters here. And I'll confirm that movement. And so there we are in the asteroid field now. There's our space dock. And it's not alone. We have 2 fighters with us, so we're going to be able to see how chaos mapping, the passive ability, works. Now you also notice how I'm not being asked to end my turn. I'm actually being asked to produce units in the active system. And that's because whenever we move with a space dock, we're always going to end up with a space dock in the active system after all the tactical actions have been completed. So if we wanted, right now, we could build units. And let's do that. Let's build, well, remember we have production value of 7. But we could probably build 7 things here, right? Our floating factory is capacity 5, and it's holding 2 fighters, so we could build, probably build, 3 more? 3 more fighters, and if we look at our fleet pool, it's 3. And because the space dock doesn't count as a ship for capacity, then we could build 3 more ships. So that actually would be a total of production of 7. So let's do that, right? Because with the floating factory 1, we wouldn't be able to build 6 things. We'd only be able to build 5. So let's show that off. So we'll build let's build 3 infantry, so that's going to cost us. It's going to cost us 2 resources. And then for ships, let's build a destroyer for 1 resource, a cruiser for 2 resources, and we can build another destroyer. So 3 infantry, 2 destroyers, and a cruiser. Yeah, we got no errors, right? So we got huge production value there. There's our ships, refreshing the board. So we just built 6 units. Actually, I could have built 7, because if I built a carrier, we would have been safe on the production front, and I could have built 7 things, right, if I built another infantry or fighter. But yeah, so another nice thing about the space dock is it doesn't count as meeting fleet capacity. It's capacity 0. It's not capacity 0. It takes up 0 in the fleet pool. All right. So now let's go ahead and end our turn, and we'll go over to Alice's tab now. So with Alice here playing as the Federation of Soul, maybe we're feeling a little uncomfortable with our friend here parked in the asteroid field, and we want to activate the system, maybe to do something. And so if we try to double click it, we get cannot activate asteroid field. The Clan of Sar has a ship in this system and has researched chaos mapping. So we can't activate it, we can't do anything. They're immune to us. Yeah. That's the passive ability of chaos mapping right there. Alright. So we'll go ahead and do I want to pass? Let's just use, I don't know if I want to pass yet, so let's use orbital drop. 1. Okay. And the turn. And with Charlie, we'll pass. Or no, that's us. We don't want to pass. Okay, back to Clan of Sar's turn. So that was chaos mapping. And the floating factory movement there. Now, the next thing I want to do, which pertains to the floating factory, is just go over using production, actually using production with it. Okay, so we saw using production in the asteroid field, but I want to do using production when you also have planets you control in the system, because it's going to bring up a little unique interface here that we haven't seen before. So before I was talking about how using chaos mapping and you can build the infantry on the planets if you want, but with production, you also have that ability, but you have more than the capability to build 1 infantry. So you actually have your ability, you have the freedom to, if you build 3 infantry, you could place 1 on this planet, 1 on this planet, and then 1 in the space region. So that's the next thing I want to show. Okay. So let's do that. Let's activate our own home system. And let's pass on the ability round. And we're not going to move any ships. So now, when we build units, first of all, we have to have our home system selected, right? Because that's the active system. So when we build units here, let's say we want to build well, we can build up to 7 infantry if we really wanted, but let's build maybe 4 infantry, and if we have the space, which we do, we'll build one destroyer. So that's going to cost us 2 gold for the 4 infantry, and by gold I mean trade goods, and 1 trade good for the destroyer. So we'll commit those, and we'll select the destroyer and 4 infantry. So now, when we click to confirm, we're not asked to confirm right away. We're actually brought up to this this selection menu where we're being prompted to decide where you want or we want to place our infantry. So we have the default space area because that's where our space dock always will be. And then any planets we control in the system will also show up here. So remember, we're placing 4 infantry. So say I just did 1, 1, and 1, and I tried to place those, we'll be prompted and told that we've only placed 3 and we need to place 4. And the same thing will happen if I try to, say, place 5 infantry in space. Now I'm placing too many, right? So instead, I have 1 infantry here, 1 infantry here, and no infantry in space. So maybe what I'll do is I'll put 2 infantry in space and 1 infantry on Liz's 2 and 1 infantry on Ragh. And now I should have 2 infantry in all these places when all is said and done, plus the destroyer in space. So if I place that, now I'll get the confirmation prompt. So we'll click yes. And now we can see that we have the 2 infantry in space with the destroyer we built, the 2 infantry on Liz's 2, and the 2 infantry on Ragh. So that works out. So we'll pass our turn here. And there's nothing else I want to do with Alice here. So we'll just pass. And we'll go on to the faction abilities. Now, I'm not going to show off Nomadic because it's just really, once you get to the status phase and you're able to score objectives, if you don't have your home planet, you just double click the objective and you'll be able to score it, right? That's nothing special or new in terms of mechanics here. But what I will show off really quickly at the end here is Scavenge. So with Scavenge, after we gain control of a planet, we'll also gain 1 trade good. So currently we're at 9 trade goods. So in this system here we have a carrier and we have 1 infantry. So maybe we'll go ahead and take Lodor in the Alpha wormhole system. So activating, I'm in the wrong player tab. So okay, I was in the complete wrong player tab. That wasn't us. We have a carrier in the Welland system and 1 infantry. So let's go ahead and take Tarman. So we'll activate this system. We'll pass the ability round. We will take our carrier with our infantry. And before we commit ground forces, just show you again, we have the 9 trade goods. So committing our infantry to Tarman and establishing control. And there you go. You got the 10 trade goods, the +1 now. Okay. So that covers everything for Clan of Sar, I think. Yeah. So it's a longer video, but that's because of the nature of the faction, they add quite a bit of uniqueness to development in terms of coding up the app. It was fun. Definitely one of my more favorite factions because of the floating factory and chaos mapping. Okay. Actually, with the completion of Clan of Sar, I believe we have 6 factions ready to go. So we can actually play a full 6-player game. The other 3 factions, because so far I've shown you guys, I've shown you the Bernia of Letnev. In the last video, we saw the Embers of Moat, and now we've seen the Clan of Sar. So the other 3 factions that we currently have going are the Emirates of Hakan, the Sardak Nar, and the other faction in this game, the Federation of Soul. So maybe in the next video we'll do one of those. But also thinking of putting a temporary hold on putting in more factions into the game and getting up some user accounts going so we can get people signed up to play. We're still talking about what to do next. We'll see. But for now, I'm going to call it the end of this video. And thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your day.